Thank you.
Right.
Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
2 in the box!
Ready to go.
We be fast and
They be slow.
Wow. A second Super Saiyan? Second in order, perhaps, but by no means in stature. Your fight is with me now.
And when I kill you, I will have killed the last Jedi.
Man, I can't fucking believe this. Another basement, another elevator. How could the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
Oh, please, please. By definition alone, they're inferior films.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning back into Inside the Sequel. This is your host, as always, Chris. This is Inside the Sequel, where we talk about sequel movies that don't get enough love and attention, and for the time being, it's your one-stop shop for Godzilla films. Today we are talking about the 1964 Godzilla vs. Mothra. And before you listen to this episode, if you haven't, you should listen to our last episode where we talk about Godzilla Raids Again from 1955. Okay. And today, for 1964's Godzilla vs. Mothra, I have a very special guest. She is no stranger on this podcast. I'm a huge fan of her show, Schlock and Awe. It is the host, Lindsay Wilkins. Lindsay, how are you today?
Hey, no, I'm good. Thank you so much for thinking of me for your Godzilla miniseries. I was so excited when you asked me. So I'm very, very happy to be on to talk some Godzilla.
Yes, I am too. This is a delicate one for me because I got a lot of thoughts on this one, and I know you like this one, and I've been stalking your letterbox when you did a review on it. So I've been stalking your letterbox when you did a review on it. So
Bruh.
Yes.
But I'm so happy you're going to be on here again. I had so much fun when you were on for Christmas. And I've just been loving what you've been doing on your podcast lately. I love how you had Anthony from the Cult Movie Podcast on as well. There was some good chemistry there. But yeah, before we get started, what's been up with you?
Just the usual, just watching movies and recording Schlock and Awe. I didn't think I was actually going to enjoy this as much as I have, but just as a way to talk to other movie fans about, like Anthony, about movies. No, it's been absolutely great. So yeah, just watching a lot of movies. Got some really cool doubles planned down the line. I think this might come out around the same time. I'll have one with Mike Scott of the Adkins Undisputed podcast. So that was a lot of fun to record. Yeah,
he's so great. Mike's I love whenever he's on Twitter. I just know it's a good time.
It is, and really a nice guy, just because I have been listening to him for absolutely years. And then all of a sudden to become friends with him. And Chris, as you know, we have a little Discord podcast group, and he's always just the nicest guy. And I'm like going, I was actually kind of a fan. And now, it's very strange.
I feel like that with everyone on Twitter. Whenever I get to actually talk to them one-on-one, I'm like, hey, big fan, by the way. I have a podcast if you ever want to be on. That's how I feel all the time.
Me too. Like, I'm a fan of yours. If you want to talk, I'm here.
It's like, it's like anyone over 100 followers. I'm like, hey, like, I'm a big fan. Do you want to be on my podcast? I have a YouTube channel if you prefer.
I don't even have that standards. I'm just like, hey, you.
Right. I swear we're a bunch of extro and introverts put into one group, and we don't know when to talk to the other person until we finally go, oh, I wanted to do that. Well, why didn't you say something? Oh, well, I'm saying something now. You're right. Let's do something. That's how I feel like it is all the time.
That is so true. It was just like, oh, can you, like, with Daniel from Cobwebs and from Matt from Film Feast and Anthony and Mike, I was like, oh, if you're not too, and you, of course, I was like just going, oh, if you're not too busy, can you come on my podcast that I'm starting? And I was like, yes. I'm like, I was not expecting any of that.
Right, and I think I've gotten too close with a few, like Mitch from the Terror Table. He's in a group chat with me, and he'll talk about like recording, and I'm literally like, I don't fucking care, like just whenever I'm ready. And I'm like, oh, I love this guy, and I'm not like so nervous around him anymore. So I'm like, I feel like that's a good place to be. And with Mike, when I recorded with him, a little peek behind the curtain when I had a recorded episode with him. I was so nervous, and I'm sure he's laughing right now, but I was like so nervous. I was messaging Daniel about it. And then he dropped an F-bomb, and I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, I feel at home now. Just cleaning up my act and everything.
It is a bit like that. It's just this weird kind of feeling like listening to you and Boozy also from the Terror Table. It was, again, such a really great chemistry of you two. And when Mitch sort of says you are the sort of combination of him and Boozy, I'm just like going, yes, I can actually see that. And listening to, again, we said before recording, the fantasy Oscars that you've been doing with Daniel and Mitch have been so entertaining to listen to, because it just looks like it feels like you're kind of listening to three guys at a bar kind of goofing on each other, fighting, and then picking movies. It has that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, because we're definitely drinking like we are at a bar. And yeah, I feel so I'm like the piece of shit between the three of them. I've not been promoting this at all, and I feel so bad. I'm like, yeah, if anybody's listening now, I've been doing a fantasy Oscars with Mitch Oliver from the Terror Table and Daniel from Cobwebs, and it is so much fun. I love doing that, and I'm glad so many people really enjoy it, because I genuinely thought, because like when Mitch got involved with it, I knew, I was like, okay, Chris, like, grow up a little bit. And then like when I started talking to Mitch, I was like, this isn't gonna work out. And then after every recording I do with the two guys, I always tell Mitch, I'm like, hey, if you get anything like upsetting from fans about me, I'm so sorry.
No, it's because I did think I called you an agent of chaos, because you tend to have the out of the box perspectives, which I absolutely love. But at the same time, so is Daniel and Mitch. Like, each of you have very distinctive movie tastes, and sometimes they will overlap and sometimes they won't. And it's just like, at the beginning, everyone was very polite about it, and then by the end of the second one, it was almost like a free for all.
Yeah, it's like because we watch too many movies for our own good, and we just try to like, measure up, but then we realize there's no point in doing that, and then we just get drunk and talk about movies we love. It gets out of hand, but I'm thankful that Daniel's involved in it, because if someone like Daniel wasn't, it would be a mess, because he's like such the he really knows how to tie things together. At least that's how I've always looked at Daniel. He always keeps me, sane and like in line. And I think Mitch, because he's exposed to me, will kind of get that fever too. Yeah. So shout out Daniel for being the mediator in that. But if anyone's looking forward to it, like I know Lindsay, you are, and you kind of already know, we are already going to record the final episode of that mini series that'll be hosted on this channel in about 2 weeks or so, and then God knows when will that release, because I'll be the one editing that. So. Yeah, if you really like those, you can check those out on the Terror Table and on Daniel's Cobwebs. And yeah, I really appreciate that you liking it, Lindsay. I mean, before we get started, I do want to talk for people who are enjoying, for some reason, this podcast and possibly the YouTube channel. I've been saying it since the beginning. If you really want to reach out to me, like if you want to put yourself on blast, like please email the show at Sequelpod at gmail.com, because we did get our first fan letter. I was like, wow, someone took the time out of their day to write my ass and like say something nice. I was like really hoping for hate mail, but I haven't gotten that yet. But I'll read a little bit of it for you. Just I don't want to read the whole email, because I got to get it. This is like a thing I'd put on my fridge. I called my mom and told her, like, Mom, someone emailed me about my show. And she's like, that's great, honey. You're 24. Let's see here. Yeah, so he goes, hey, so I stumbled upon your show because I finally saw the second RoboCop movie. Again, people usually just stumble onto the show. No one's actually seeking this out, which I'm glad to know. You don't need to be seeking this out. And he goes, I was surprised to see, he was like, I'm surprised to see that none of the bigger movie podcasts I listen to has ever even touched it, for good reason. And he goes, to me, RoboCop 2 was the perfect sequel, trotting through the same beats of the original in a bigger splash in a little bit dumber way with comedy beats, precocious kids, and an evil mirror to the hero being introduced. He's being shot up and exploded. These are awesome. There are definitely better movies that are sequels, but I've never thought that I'd love RoboCop like I did. Anyway, I wanted to write and say I listened to your show and I appreciated your enthusiasm, and I wanted to say keep it up. He also said he ran into another hilarious sequel he would love to see on this show. He said he saw it in a movie store years ago until he saw it on Prime. That movie, American Psycho 2. He said the premise is goofy, undermines the twist and the reveal of the first one, and I didn't really like it. Didn't have the same satire, but I did love the gimmicks, and it had a shockingly schlocky, is what he said, a shockingly schlocky. So that's why, Lindsay, I thought you'd love that. Yeah. It's a shockingly schlocky sex thriller with Mila Kunis and William Shatner. I hope they don't bang in this movie, but I kind of hope to see that. It was a good time, and it gave my friends a lot to talk about. Anyway, like the show, just wanted to chime in. Best, Kevin. Kevin, if you're listening, you have my heart. And thank you for possibly exposing me to a hot sex scene with Mila Kunis and William Shatner at some point. But yeah, if you want to write the show, you will get your email read, and we will love you for it. So shout out Kevin. Everyone should strive to be like him. Can't wait to do an American Psycho 2 because I need to still see the first one.
Oh, the first one is... I like the first one a lot just because I think... because I've also read the book, which I won't recommend because it's gross.
Oh, there's a book.
Yeah, it was based on a book. One of the most, it's still banned in Queensland and Australia. It's really violent. Like, it is one of the most violent books you'll ever read. The things that happen in it are just like, oh, God. And that didn't really have the satire. It was a different kind of satire. And then who directed it? Mary...
It was a female who directed it, too.
Yeah. She kind of satirized the misogyny in it, which kind of gives it this other level. And I knew there was a sequel, and I knew it had Mila Kunis as the Central American Psycho. I did not know about the William Shatner, Mila Kunis sex scene, though. So.
See, I don't know if that exists, but I hope there is one. Because if there's going to be two people I want to see in bed together, it's an attractive woman with William Shatner.
It's an older man. Oh my God. Wow. Even if those two get flirty, it's still going to be a what situation.
Yeah. It's going to feel like when what's her name? Audrey Hepburn was with Cary Grant in that one movie, and he goes, "Oh, I was old enough to be your grandpa," or something like that. And they still have a romance.
I think that's Charade, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is a great movie. But even he's like going, dude, I'm too old for you.
Yeah, so Kevin, thank you for exposing this, and shout out Prime for putting this movie out so I can watch it and exploit it and review it like we do on here all the time. Yes. So so let's move on to today's episode. So we're talking about Godzilla versus Mothra. I think anybody who's listened to Lindsay or I or both of us at the same time, we love Godzilla. We did a double with Lincoln and Shin Godzilla, which was so much fun, and I definitely bragged to friends about. And I just knew I had to have her back on for more Godzilla. And Lindsay, you're excited for the new movie, right?
Oh yes. Where I am, it's safer to go to the movie theater, so I went to a movie which they played Godzilla versus King Kong, the trailer. That trailer looks awesome on a big screen. I was so pumped. I am so ready. I don't care if it's going to be good or bad. I just am looking forward to it.
Yeah, at first when I saw the trailer, I was like, I'm so excited for it, and I was like, I hope people want to go see it, but I did not expect the outpour of just love that people are having for this trailer for the upcoming movie. And yeah, we're here to educate people who are like, because I've seen a lot of people on the internet starting to go, oh, I need to watch some Godzilla movies or some King Kong movies to get excited for this. So that's what we're here. We're here to do some education on the movies. So we did Godzilla Raids Again, which is the one I said you need to watch first to kind of like, these are the 5 Godzilla movies you should watch before the new movie comes out. So you should watch Raids Again. And if you liked it, then you're probably back here again. So for Godzilla vs. Mothra,
he stands 40 stories. He breathes radioactive fire. The earth quakes beneath his mighty feet. All who survive his wrath curse his unrelenting fury. Now, a new ally stands to battle the menace of Godzilla.
Over there!
The gigantic insect known as Mothra.
Turn on the power.
Will the combined might of man's forces and Mothra be enough to halt Godzilla's latest rampage? Thrill to the fight of the century. Godzilla versus Mothra.
Lindsay, do you remember when you first saw this one?
Yes, it was maybe about 6, maybe 7 years ago. I'm still newish when it comes to Godzilla, just because I never grew up with it. And it was the first sequel I saw after I saw the original. And as someone who didn't know that much about Japanese culture or a lot of Japanese cinema at that time, this was, at the time, I think 7 years is still a long time ago for me. It was still one of the weirdest movies I'd seen at that point because I wasn't used to the imagery of what it was doing. I mean, this has fairy twins. It has a giant moth. If you don't know what Mothra is, she's a moth who's a god or goddess. Godzilla is a much more relaxed Godzilla than he is, even though he's still a destructive force. He's a much more relaxed, hanging out Godzilla. And I think I was just taken by what the fuck is happening in this movie, not understanding any Godzilla lore or anything Godzilla. And then from there, it's much more normal now, but at the time I was just like, I don't understand what is happening.
Yeah, I think for people who, because originally I was going to do Godzilla vs. King Kong from 1962, but I think it's no surprise I don't like that movie very much, which is why I'm very excited for this new one. And I think 1964 is almost more essential than 1962 because it shows you Mothra, which King Kong vs. Godzilla didn't have. And it shows you who Mothra is, and it has a really good human story, in my opinion, better than King Kong vs. Godzilla. I also think it's important to show that Godzilla is still because I think when people think Godzilla, they start thinking the later sequels where he's like really fun and goofy, and in this one, he's still kind of a badass. Like he's still like not a pleasant guy to be around. No. And also it brings back Honda. So people who I think love Godzilla, they're going to want to know who Ishiro Honda is. And I think this is like one of his crown jewel films from the Godzilla movies. And also I think it's an easy watch, at least in my opinion. I know for some people, these Godzilla sequels, they're going to, after I think King Kong vs. Godzilla 1962, they're going to say these sequels are a little hard to digest because they are silly guys in suits, but I think the important thing about this one is it really shows you the introduction of, well, for a history lesson, I guess, after 55's Raids Again, Toho put the Godzilla films on a shelf and kind of forgot about them for a while. So between 55, 56, all the way to until eventually 1962, Toho went the route of making the Mothra movie, which was hugely successful from Honda. And then they did the Rodan movie. They did a Baragon film. They did the Gargantuan films. Like these were very, very popular other different monster sci-fi movies. They're kaijus. And then in 62, the American studios thought, hey, like we want to make a King Kong movie, and I know the Japanese have done Godzilla before, so why not pit them against them? Honda agreed. Toho thought it was a huge money grab because unfortunately Toho, like I've said before, Toho is eventually just going to become sort of like a Disney Light, where they're just about trying to make money with Godzilla anywhere they can. And so they do the King Kong versus Godzilla. There's no winner, but the Americans are going to say King Kong did because, well, the Americans put a lot of the money to it. So, of course,
and King Kong is their guy. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. And it feels very much a East versus West kind of mentality, which is one reason I didn't care for 62. But in 64, Honda comes back and he kind of gets free reign to do his own movie again, which he hasn't done since 55 for Godzilla. So anybody who wants to know more about Honda, I think you should like read up on him. He's so fascinating. He is such an environmentalist. He cares about history. He cares about culture. And there's always those little bits found in his movies that make his movies stand out a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, no, I was about to say yes when you sort of said you can see his love for environmentalism and history and maybe Japan, just in general. His movies feel very patriotic, but not in that arrogant, I own this kind of patriotism, but more in that the kind of celebrating everything that it has to offer patriotism. And I think you can see a lot of that in Godzilla versus Mothra is, it's because it's very much about the environment. It's very much about people who are trying to destroy the environment and kind of because of that kind of creating this, well, bringing Godzilla back, essentially. I love his entrance in this movie. It is glorious. And it's just this, you can sort of see the kind of different layers of Japanese society and how they conflict with each other. And it's kind of all, nothing's really heavy-handed, but it's all woven into the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it would be so easy for a director to make a movie with some symbolism be so heavy-handed. It's almost like a Adam McKay kind of film. You know, they could make, it's so easy to do that. But Honda, I think, always knows when to press on the brakes and then let the story naturally go to where he wants it to go.
Exactly. I think he does. And I think you obviously can definitely see it in the original because that's what the original is about. And what I love about 50s Toho is, yes, they became sort of Disney Light, as in we are the House of Godzilla and this is our brand. But in the 50s, they were kind of pushing the envelope a little bit in terms of how much they poked at Japanese authority, government, culture. I mean, not even 10 years since the bombs were dropped in Japan, they make Godzilla, which is about how Japan is dealing with this. And you still see that in this movie here, where they want to study it, they want to develop it because they're obsessed, for obvious reasons, they are obsessed with nuclear power. But at the same time, they know what the cost is more than anyone else. And so those early Godzilla movies really tend to kind of, which is why I love Shin Godzilla, because I think it goes back to that, is it kind of just pokes at Japanese society and power structures in a way you do not see even later Japanese movies really going for.
Yeah, and I think it's because Honda just had such a passion for the Godzilla character. Eventually, Honda gets so kind of grumbly and just kind of dragging his feet because Toho's making him make more Godzilla movies when he doesn't want to.
Yes.
But this is still at that stage where he's kind of like, I'll still give it the college try. I'll still put something of value out. And when we talk about the last two movies of the miniseries with Mecha Godzilla and Terror of Mecha Godzilla, you'll definitely see that the understanding of dragging of the feet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a good one because if people were watching Godzilla Raids again and then they're like, well, what did I miss, between that time and why should I watch this one? Well, you get Honda back, which is great. You get composer Akira Ifukube back, who who his music in all these Godzilla movies are phenomenal. You kind of feel like you're missing out just a little bit when he's not in there. But you also get the versus aspect of it. And like we said with Godzilla Raids Again, it introduces the whole sumo wrestling type of fighting that Godzilla will be doing. But it's very like we said last episode, it's super fast, it's quick, it's still Godzilla is still a presence of evil and a symbol of it. But in this one, especially if you're gonna get ready for the new one, this is how Godzilla is going to be fighting. He knows that there is a different monster, so he obviously wants to retain his title. And the thing I like about how this movie starts is it starts with kind of like an awe and wonder, and then the human story, I think, really takes off super well. A lot of times with these Godzilla sequel movies, the human stories are always kind of like I guess it's filler.
Yes,
but this one starts off really well with some good old capitalism and some wonder.
It really does. No, I love the opening shots when you just have a typhoon attacking the shore, and it kind of sets up what Godzilla is in some respects, because he always usually emerges from the sea. He is this kind of force for destruction. He is completely he's not he's man-made, but he's kind of this natural force that you just can't turn away from. And of course, you find out one of the reasons for the typhoon, or why the typhoon is important, is because you have people trying to make a reclaimed beach, which means they're trying to put more land over the sea, purely for capitalist reasons, and some good old, not just capitalism, but some good old embezzlement and a few other things happening in there as well. So it's I don't know. I think I find this movie absolutely delightful, even the bad guys, even though it's got really some serious issues of class issues in what's the word when you dispossess? Is it dispossessed when you're actually kicking someone off a piece of land because you want to own it?
They totally have disregard for people who've been there first when it comes to money. And it is kind of sad to see, but that's why Honda puts that stuff in this movie. Just the whole commercializing a Mothra egg to be the call to action for this movie makes you think, are these people having everyone's interest in mind, or because they want to open up a theme park with Mothra's egg? But if Honda actually originally wanted it to be, or Toho originally wanted it to be Godzilla being washed up on shore, and they would make an amusement park out of Godzilla instead. I'm glad they didn't go that way, and they did the Mothra egg.
Yeah.
And they want to make it a tourist attraction. And then it kind of becomes an espionage thriller as well with reporters. You get something like all the President's Men type of movie with the stars. You get Akira Takarada again, who is my biggest man crush in these movies. And you get returning from Raids Again, Hiroshi Koizumi, I think is how you say it. As well. And you get some more comedy that you don't see if you watch just Raids Again into this one. You get more comedy this time around, but you also feel the human story almost be better than the Godzilla parts, because it's a really well-written story.
It really, really is. And you do have a lot of things, like you said, the reporters and all the President's Men, because you do get these two reporters coming down on the beach. And that, which is a theme that carries over from the original Mothra, but they sort of start digging into so why do you want to do all this? Why is it so important that you need to finish by a certain date? And it's all about making money and kind of taking money away from, because you find out they've been renting something to the fishermen, I think, is it? Or they've been doing something dodgy with the fishermen. And because before we were recording, I started watching the original Godzilla, just because I can never just watch one Godzilla. Sure, I have to go in for another one. And of course, because that's also directed by Honda, you get you start with the fishermen, and then you go to the next strata of, say, scientists, and then you go up to the government. And this movie does the same thing, but with this kind of capitalism theme. You start with the poor fishermen who can't pay this rent or can't pay them any more money that they're demanding. They've lost a big thing of their water thing because they're reclaiming the land. And then you go up to the reporters who are trying to figure out what exactly is going on, and the fact that they've decided to use this Mothra egg. And then you get to kind of the capitalists, the dodgy fraudsters at the top. And no, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think when you compare this to the Legendary Pictures Godzilla movies, for all the gripe I say about 2014, after that, though, the human stories are still pretty serviceable. They're pretty enjoyable. So if you want something like that and you don't want to just watch Godzilla 98, like 64's Mothra and Godzilla, I think really will put you in your seat and kind of like enjoy this little this movie with so many different subgenres, and I love how it adds the fantasy from the original Mothra in this one, because it carries over really well. And not only are you like having like these reporters like talking about exploiting this corporate greed, but then you get the infant island twins talking about Mothra and they're floating. And then you're kind of thinking, well, what the hell is going on now? Like, I thought this was a pretty cut and dry, story. And then you get the fantasy thrown into it.
You do. I love, is it Iowa Island? No, I can't remember the island's name. Anyway, there's a very specific island where Mothra comes from. And you do. It's always connected to these two twin fairies, these very like Thumbelina kind of people.
Yeah, that's what I always thought of. They were too.
Yeah, little Thumbelina girls who sing, and they're kind of, I never quite understood what their relationship is, but they're kind of like each other's guardians. They are connected by very, very specific ways. And then, of course, you have the people who live on this island, and they are also feeling the brunt of the destruction of the environment that is happening in Japan, because it is also affected. When you push the sea back, it's going to affect them. And what I love is the whole metaphor of you cannot ever push the sea back in Japan, because it's always going to come back. Though, side note, I ended up watching Godzilla 98 after listening to you and Boozy's show. And I enjoyed it a little bit more if I didn't think it was a Godzilla movie. If it was just a Jurassic Park Aliens ripoff, I was like, I am all in.
It is like that movie is like it's such a standing on its own kind of movie, and it's weird.
Yeah. Yes,
it's so
it is
weird.
Like the Legendary movies, I think you have to know a little bit of Godzilla and the mythology behind it. 98 Godzilla, nope. It is this weird iguana thing is in New York, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah, seriously. And in that Godzilla design, it's so weird. It's not even big enough to trample the city. It goes through like the buildings and like almost like a King Kong size type, which is weird. Which I don't expect nothing less from American studios. But but yeah, oh yeah, seriously. And you know what? And that's another thing for this movie that I think is important, is that I still think 64 Godzilla is still the best looking Godzilla costume. Because he's taller, he's meaner. This is the last Godzilla movie that he's technically the antagonist of the movie. Because in the next one you get the next year Ghidorah, which Godzilla is teaming up with Mothra and Rodan. Spoilers. Yeah, this is like the last one where he's actually truly the bad guy for a long time. I don't think you get him as the bad guy till 1984. But yeah, I think the suit in this is awesome. It's funny because you expect, if you're watching like the trailers for the new movie, you expect this one to be like a bunch of sumo wrestlers running around and stuff like that. But since Mothra is like a fly, it's kind of makes the fight sequences a little bit more interesting.
It really does. And but just before we get into the fight scene, I just want to talk about Godzilla's entrance, because it is absolutely perfect to the movie. It is, he comes through the sand. Like you see this kind of the sand start moving like an earthquake. And all of a sudden Godzilla just pops up and goes, "Hey guys, I'm back." And everyone's like, "Oh no, it's Godzilla." So you're right, he is definitely the bad guy, and he's just kind of like the curse of bad environmentalism. When you're destroying the environment, you are going to call up Godzilla, and he's just gonna screw everything up.
Yeah, and that's what's the beauty of Honda handling Godzilla. Even though Godzilla is quote unquote the bad guy, basically because it's a giant monster destroying human man-made things. There's a reason for why Godzilla is around, whether it's humans tampering with things they're not supposed to. It's like the nature versus industrialism, which is such a prevalent subject in just Japanese cinema in general. You can still see that in some Japanese films today. And And Godzilla is just there. Yeah, he's there because they're messing with the infant island. They're commercializing, and he wants to eat that Mothra egg when it comes down to it as well.
Yes, he really wants. Yes, he does. He wants to poach that thing and have it for breakfast.
Yeah, and I just love when Akira Ifube just does his blah, blah, and he's just Godzilla just walking around and doing his roars. And, this movie, I think the set pieces really work well because if you got a little snippets in 54 and 55, the little miniature scale models, but those are in black and white. And now that this one's in color, you can see so much more of for some reason they beefed up the number of the military in this movie and what they use. You get so many tanks, you get so many little missiles being shot up, and and you just can't help but think, oh, this is something I would have loved as a kid, just watching.
No, I think it's why I kind of love Mothra as much as I do for some weird reason, is because I think she's the kind of the monster that I would have gravitated toward as a kid, and it's just this kind of she's technically looks like a fly or a butterfly or some sort of insect, but she's so colorful and she's kind of the beacon for all that is meant to be good and beautiful about nature. So and she's kind of this gorgeous thing, and she has fairies who are her familiars, and I don't know, I think as a kid I would have absolutely loved Mothra, and so as an adult I'm just going, I'm all in on Mothra. Just even if I just get a little bit of it, I'm just happy.
Yeah, and I love Mothra. You see Mothra in this movie and in other sequels that she's in, and then you see her in, especially also I love what they did with Mothra in the Legendary pictures, especially in King of the Monsters.
Yes.
She just always seems like the boys are acting stupid, so now I have to come and fix the mess, is how I always feel. And she always comes on top. Which is kind of the bummer part of King of the Monsters, the way they did with Mothra. But then again, it's kind of deep cut where they make Mothra kind of die in King of the Monsters because Mothra's always revolving into a new cocoon. So that makes sense.
And this one, she, spoilers for Mothra, she does pass away once because that's her life cycle is incredibly important to her kind of mythology. So once she lays an egg, she will die, and then the new Mothra will appear, which means we get the most adorable weird lava thing I've ever seen in anything, which is probably why my first reaction to this movie was, what the hell?
They look so weird. They're just they can swim, but they're also slowly crawling together in unison.
Slugs thingies.
Yeah, it's Godzilla versus Mothra, but it really is Godzilla versus larva the whole movie. and they shoot their little
webs,
their
thingies.
string. Yeah, I think of Pokemon, and I just think string shot, honestly, the whole time. But yeah, I mean, they're like, hey, we're gonna kick your ass, Godzilla, because you're causing a lot of trouble, and I love that. And I think that's what makes, for people who haven't seen the original Mothra, and you're getting, because I didn't see the original Mothra first, I saw this one first, and made me want to watch the original Mothra. And then when they made the 90s Mothra movies, I'm like, oh, good, I can't wait to watch those. Yeah, you're right. I think Mothra is an interesting character because she balances the good and bad. And then in Godzilla King of the Monsters, she obviously is trying her hardest to balance whatever Ghidorah and Godzilla's beef is, because it's insane. And in this one, I like to have it. I like how it's more centralized. It's not such a big grand movie. It is such a. It's very much. How do I say this? It's very self-contained.
It is very self-contained. Yes. It's not a sprawling movie, and it is kind of more about the human characters than I think most other Godzilla movies are, because it is about the reporters, it is about them trying to figure out what is going on, it is about these sort of, and the bad guys are dopey as hell, but I love them, and it's kind of about them trying to figure out what's going on, and then trying to fix, once they know what the situation, they want to fix it. They don't want to just kind of do nothing, which I kind of like. It's this whole sense of, oh, we've figured out what's happening, so we need to find a way to fix it, and that is, of course, to get Mothra to come and fight Godzilla.
Yeah, and Godzilla is the bad guy, just like the company who wants to basically take these people's homes away and create like a new amusement park to exploit, these kaiju monsters. They're just as guilty of being the villains. But the thing about the difference between them and Godzilla is that Godzilla is the judgment of it, because Godzilla starts to cool it off near the end of the movie when Takarada and his band kind of slows down what these capitalist guys are trying to do. And I sound like a Marxist revolutionary saying these capitalists, but these money hungry industrial CEOs, and I love how they stop them, and then Godzilla starts to cool it off, and the larva starts to finish him off too, and he kind of like accepts his defeat,
It's it's a circle of I can't believe I'm saying this. It's a circle of life. Sorry about the corny saying, or how nature kind of works. If you try and mess with it too much, it's gonna break down the ecosystem, and Godzilla is kind of the repercussions of that, which is just like saying, oh no, if you do this, if you keep trying to exploit the land just for profit, you're going to get a Godzilla to come in and step on your house. No, I do like this Godzilla. I like the suit. I like the fact that he's taller. I like the fact that he fights like a sumo wrestler. But I kind of like the way because it's a guy in a suit, but I've always liked the way Godzilla walks. It's kind of more of just a relaxed kind of wander, and he is causing absolute destruction, but he's more he's not the cause, he's the consequence. And I think that's kind of why they need to deal with him, but he wouldn't have been there in the first place if they had left well alone.
Yeah, seriously. And then you kind of get that with these legendary pictures. There's always a human part that's driving why these kaiju are fighting. And I think that kind of starts with 64's Godzilla. I mean, 54 and 55 kind of have that. Well, not 54, but 54 for sure. But, 64's Godzilla vs. Mothra really brings the whole humans are tampering, and Godzilla and these kaiju need to stop it. And it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the sequel movies before you get to the 80s. And I really like that. And I think that's why this one is so cherished.
Yeah, I think that is for a reason. I think it's beautiful to look at. I mean, there's all these lush colors kind of popping out everywhere. I love the music in it, the original score, but also it brings back, Mothra's theme and the twins singing. I don't know, it's just it's not a hard watch. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like watching, actually, from what I've noticed, a lot of kids love foreign movies because it's just on Netflix and they can just sit down and 10-year-olds going, I want to watch this robot series, it's in Russian, whatever. So that's cool if that's what's happening, but I know a lot of people my age hate subtitles and they don't like dubbing either. So anything remotely, do I have to watch anything foreign or any foreign language movie or anything that's why do I have to read my movie? I think it's a big thing I hear a lot. So I think Godzilla vs. Mothra is, even though it's subtitled, it's so easy to watch because it's really gorgeous to look at, and because you're dealing with Godzilla and Mothra, who essentially don't speak, you can just kind of get involved in the story without needing to know exactly what's the details of the piece. So
and the glorious thing about these movies we're going to be talking about in this miniseries is they're about 80 minutes and shorter. They are quick movies.
They are efficient little movies, yes.
And people who are listening and haven't watched this movie yet and are planning to before the new one, just remember that it has this. The great thing about these Godzilla movies are they're very entertaining and silly, but they still, depending on the director, they still have some sort of message or that they're trying to angle, which I don't feel like they ever have to do, but because they do, I like that a little bit more,
Yeah, no, Godzilla has a real sense of tradition, and I think even as much flack as the legend. Now, I like the legendary pictures more than most people, and even though I don't love the 2014, I think I still like it a little bit more than a lot of other people just because I like Godzilla. But I think they kind of they don't maybe do the tradition as well as I'd like, but they are aware of that tradition. King of Monsters is so infused with the tradition of what Godzilla is that I think they forget to explain it sometimes, so you don't necessarily know why something's happening, and it's just monsters fighting. I'm like, it is just monsters fighting, but Doherty is absolutely got the mythology and the traditions of what these creatures are in these movies. And it is usually people messing with the environment the way they shouldn't be. And that's always in a Godzilla movie because it's tradition. And I love the fact that they don't forget where Godzilla came from.
Yeah, that's so well put. I love that. Yeah, because it's like you can watch this movie and see like a guy in a suit destroying a bunch of, set pieces and the military defeating him. But like, the human parts I think are also just as fun and there's a lot of message. That's why I always say like, kids would love these Godzilla movies because, they're just so fun to watch. But then, you can learn a little bit of a lesson here and there that's not so heavy-handed as well, where they kind of feel like it's homework.
Exactly. You're not going, oh, I need to study this piece of thing because it relates to this. You can just go, oh, no, it's a fun adventure story. And as you get older and maybe you read up a bit more about Japanese history, and especially in the 60s when it was a huge social upheaval, because like everywhere else, you had all these youths rising and questioning authority, and they had a whole bunch of student protests going on in the mid-60s. Actually, it's just a book and it's nothing to relate to, but if you want to know more about that, there's a great Murakami novel called Norwegian Wood, which is set in the 60s in Tokyo. And it's very laid back. It's essentially a love triangle story, but it is set in the 1960s in Tokyo. So you do get this feeling of a social revolution happening around. It's kind of known as the Japanese Catcher in the Rye, just not as cynical.
I like that. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. If you need to learn about history, Lindsay's your go-to for that for sure. But yeah, I really like this movie. It's one of my favorites, at least in the Showa era. If you ask me in all of my Godzilla, I'll have a day and a half to think about it because I can't. But yeah, this is, I think, an essential one you need to watch before the new one comes out, because if they're going to talk about Mothra, you want to know about Mothra, or if you haven't seen King of the Monsters, she's in it. And you just the whole versus aspect of it. I think if you watch 62 King Kong vs. Godzilla, I feel like you're just going to be going in with the expectation of like what 62 was like. And I don't want people to be like that. You want to go in like really wanting to see these guys kick each other's ass and hope for a good story with it too. And I feel like 64 kind of does that a little bit better.
Yeah, 64 is kind of the right way you do this kind of storyline, I think. So I'm hoping Godzilla versus King Kong kind of follows that same kind of thing, as in something, they've got the human element, there might be something happening, and this is the consequence of what is happening because you've meddled in something, not because these two just want to fight.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, that's really what the hope is, at least for me here. But yeah, so check out Godzilla versus Mothra in 64. You can get it on the Criterion. If you have that Showa era box set, you can watch it there, which I highly recommend everyone buys that box set. It's beautiful. You can watch it on the Criterion channel as well if you're not subscribed to them, or you can also watch it on HBO Max as well. And that's part of one of the main reasons I want to do this is because the accessibility of the ones I've chosen. You can watch this on HBO Max. I don't know if it has the dub or not. I can't remember because I own the disc. But either way, just read the subtitles if it's on there. You'll really enjoy it.
No, I definitely recommend watching this one. I think it's really, really fun, and it moves really, really quickly. Even if I was really tired last night, I started watching it, and I just remembered, oh yeah, this movie moves really quickly. It's just, there's always movement in the frame. There's always, just because Honda was a really great director, and knew how to kind of mix all these elements together really well. So you never feel like you're stopping one section and moving to the other. It all flows really nicely.
Yeah, and it was a huge money grab for Toho as well, bring its two biggest properties into one movie for the first time ever.
Yes.
And then also, it made so much money that it spawned a sequel that exact same year. That's right. The exact same year, another Godzilla movie came out with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. You don't see that anymore.
No, you don't. They must have pushed that one. It's like, right, because that's got the lava in it. It doesn't have Mothra, it has a lava, doesn't it?
It has the larva in it. Yep.
Another lava. But no, I remember watching that thinking, oh, there's still lava. And no, it's because it was made the same year. They're like, right, we have these lavas.
Year. They used that same suit and it looks worn.
Yes.
But yeah, and then that's just part of the charm about just the Showa era. The money was tight, and they were cutting corners and using the same suits, and it's great.
No, it was this kind of process of watching Japanese industrialism kind of on screen and how quick they could be. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and just like passion there. And this is one of Honda's prouder movies, which is, something I like to see. I love Jun Fukuda, and we'll talk about him at some point later in this series. But
Yes.
Honda, Honda is the heart and soul of just Godzilla in general, and you want to pay respects with him in this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lindsay, thank you so much for hopping on and nerding out with Godzilla with me and helping me recommend this one for our listeners.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, what's gonna be new with you, so we can stalk you on that.
Nothing new, just keeping on. If you want to follow Schlock and Awe, you can do so on Twitter and Instagram on Schlock and Awe 1, where I just post random doubles on there a lot that might not make sense, but I think there's a thread that connects them, which seems to happen often. Or you can follow me just on Reading Geek, which is where I tend to geek out about a lot of movies and stuff. So
yeah, I love how at the recording yesterday, I love how the F This Movie Fest at some points you were thinking, oh, double feature with this would be amazing. And I was like, there it is. I love it.
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, I always I'm thinking I wonder what Lindsay's cooking up with these doubles, because I was doing the same with Daniel when we were watching. I was like, oh, this would be a great double. I bet Lindsay is probably going to be doing something like this.
And then I started posting things, and people just rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, of course she is."
Yeah, I love it. Because I always say every time, it is such a talent to figure out what movies go well with each other, because I can't do that, But Lindsay, thank you again for hopping in on here and helping this mini series move forward. I'd love to have you on again on the show soon, and you're always welcome on here. The fans love to have you listen. I know that because whenever I do an episode with you, people always go like, "Oh, I like that episode. That was good." And I was like, "I know why you like the episode. You can just tell me. You're not hurting my feelings."
Oh, thank you. No, anytime. I love coming on here. It's always a blast talking with you. And anytime you can come on Schlock and Awe. In fact, we have something in the works for Schlock and Awe down in a couple, maybe next month or so, which I'm really looking forward to. Chris came to me with a really great double, and I went, well, yes, now I have to do that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I keep thinking like March is like it's like King Kong versus Godzilla is like all of March. It's like such a big month for that. And I'm like, I want to do, like, I love Godzilla, but it's like, I'm so excited for like these next episodes I'll be doing after this is all over. But like, yeah, no, I'm happy to have another huge fan of Kaiju on this podcast. So again, seriously, thank you so much for hopping on, Lindsay.
No, again, thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Yep. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to keep checking us out, because later this week we'll probably post another episode for the next upcoming recommendation, which is 1968's Destroy All Monsters, the Godzilla Avengers movie. So make sure to stay tuned for that one. And if you liked this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends. Give it a like. It's available on all available podcasts. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel as well. I say that cautiously because maybe you shouldn't. But
no, you should. It's him ranting about minimalism and drinking while drinking. It's really great.
At some point, I'm gonna blur the lines between Blu-ray minimalism and just minimalism in general, and then I'm gonna get a real audience coming after me. So. But thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time. And remember, if you're not loving kaiju movies, do you really care about cinema? Anyway, we'll see you next time.